the Leaders of Tomorrow, the only show on Indian television where you, the MSME, get center stage. This is ET Now special daily initiative to give MSMEs and entrepreneurs the opportunity to be front and center on every industry and area that matters to you. Tonight on the show, we're talking about the future of solar energy for you, the MSME entrepreneur, and we have some of the biggest names here with us. Let me start by introducing Vijay Karya. He's the chairman of Elecrama. We also have tonight is Vikal Mundra. He's the MD of Ujas Energy. And last but not the least, Basan Jain, CEO of Mahindra Sustain. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time here on the show to talk about one of the things that's very close to the heart of the government as well, and is critically needed at this point for India, and that of course is renewable energy. I want to start by talking about some of the targets that we have. Reports suggest that approximately 5% is what India contributes as far as the global renewable generation capacity is concerned. My question to the three of you is that if we want to become, and we are to become, a renewable energy superpower, what's it going to take?
So, the first thing that it's going to take is a lot of will of the government to simplify policies, to give direction to technologies of the industry, and to create a sustainable demand so that new players will come into this field. It's a dying need of the hour, considering the environment that we are into and considering the fact that we have 10 of the most polluted cities across the world in India. It's essential that we reduce our carbon footprint, and therefore, it's not just imperative to have renewable energy in India, but it's now vital that we start giving this a huge thrust, because this is the only way forward.
Okay, so policy and a sustainable policy is something that we have discussed in the past with you, Mr. Karya. But my question to the two of you gentlemen then is that what is it going to take to be able to convert the last mile? Through our show, if you can talk to the MSMEs who are watching about why perhaps even economically it makes sense for them to be able to look at the source of energy, to be able to use in their businesses, and to even look at the sector.
So RE is the future of energy. World over, RE is gaining pace, and when we say RE, mostly it's solar because of two distinct features. Solar, we can generate it's possible to have a distributed solar generation, means wherever you have the load or wherever you want to consume the power, you can have a solar generation. Secondly, modular. Solar is modular. Suppose you need 5 today, you can put 5. Tomorrow you need 7, you can add on 2 and it makes 7. So I always say, solar works like aspirin works in a heart stroke. Solar can declog the load things. If you have a load center and you have a congestion in your network, solar is the answer.
Okay, so speaking of that answer, Basan, my question to you is essentially what I'm trying to understand. If MSMEs are to realize, that we have some of the most polluted cities, the damage to the environment, the cost benefits coming to them from using solar energy, from using renewable energy, what's it going to take to make that conversion?
What MSME today is concerned about is purely to reduce their energy cost.
Now, given the tariff at which the solar prices have come down to, and also the capital cost, there is a very strong business case for these MSMEs to install the solar on their, within their premises. There are two challenges which MSMEs are facing today. One is very clearly the access to capital, because one has to invest upfront, and when MSME has to prioritize in terms of investment, obviously the money will go towards their core business and not towards energy. So there is a need to create a very robust mechanism to finance these installations. Second, the government also has to take into consideration when it comes to liberalizing the policies, especially how do we interconnect, and there's no policy overhang on them in terms of cross subsidy charge or wheeling charges or the permit and approval issue which exist in abundance today.
Okay, so we've been talking about government policy. I'm going to circle back to that, but I want to understand in terms of the cost benefits for MSMEs who are going to convert to solar power. Is it as simple as saying this is how much you're going to see in the short term? What are perhaps companies like yourself, the industry body doing when it comes to telling small businesses these are the benefits for you? On one hand is the push by the government, but on the other, as the ecosystem which is promoting solar energy, what is being done?
So let's look at it in terms of two angles for the MSMEs. One is a cost benefit analysis for the MSMEs if they install solar. The second is the huge amount of employment and the huge amount of employability generated for MSMEs if solar large projects come across. So, maybe the government is not very encouraging today of having these small solar plants affixed maybe on the rooftop or in small premises, and that's because it's difficult to maintain, expensive to maintain, etc. But large solar projects coming up in remote areas has benefits in multiple ways. One is that you get to utilize unutilized land bank. B, the farmers, the poor farmers, the aged farmers who are owning that land bank can monetize it. C, the maintenance of the solar projects can lead to a lot of employability and employment in villages, and therefore the skill development, because you have to have these skills imparted to people to maintain these solar plants. And lastly, the persons then need not leave their hometowns or home villages to go out somewhere in search of employment. So, the government in its thrust for renewable energy should look at not just per se the price of per unit of power, but they should look at it in a macro economic picture. You can actually have distributed generation and therefore even distributed employment for these MSMEs, and maybe some amount of subsidy would be required. There is a general impression in the people that we don't require subsidies. There is a general impression in the government that now that this sector is well settled, we don't require subsidies. I would really strongly urge the government to keep persisting with the subsidies for the next 2 to 3 years till such time that this sector is firmly established.
The last time we spoke, of course, was before the budget, when you had a couple of things that you wanted to see from the government, Mr. Karia. Now that the budget fine print has come out, are you happy? Would you still like to see much more for your space?
See, industry is a greedy animal and we always want to see more, but I think looking at the overall perspective, I think the budget was well balanced in the sense that it gave a little bit of everything to everybody. But what I would like to see from the government, which is very simple to do in terms of policies today, is A, they need to give depreciation benefits to an individual if that individual installs solar on his house. That's not happening today. B, I would like to see the government become a facilitator and not a regulator in this segment, because there is too much of regulation, there is too much of imposition of various rules, and for every small thing you have to approach either a nodal agency or a kind of approving authority to get your things through. C, like you have a simple thing that you produce an invoice for claiming a depreciation of a motor car. Solar energy is far better solution, because it's actually helping the government reduce its carbon footprint, it's helping us reduce our import bills, and it's helping the people generate or become self-sustainable in their own energy needs. So, actually this should be the simplest mechanism today available. And D, as Basant rightly said, I would like to see a lot of finance flowing into the side. I can get a motor car today at 7% or less. Some of these people finance motor cars at 0% for 3 years. Why can't we do this for solar systems? Sure. Why can't banks help us propagate this? Because ultimately this is for the good of the country. This is not for the benefit of an individual. A motor car is for the benefit of an individual.
So, speaking of the budget, this is the first budget that we have had post the introduction of GST. Has that had much of an impact in terms of the way business is being done on companies like yourself, perhaps?
From the renewable energy standpoint, there have been many positives in this budget. One, very clearly, there is a clear focus around rural electrification, especially the irrigation pump. There is a budget allocation to promote that part of it. So, yes, there are like positives. We were afraid of getting some kind of duty levied on the panel, which did not happen. Again, a very positive sign. Overall, on industry is positive, but what as an industry we were also expecting government to clarify the position around GST, which is a little ambiguous today, though industry as a whole has formed certain view, but doesn't really have a policy clarity as such. And if that view is challenged by the tax authority, then this industry is really heading for a huge issue.
Gentlemen, do hold that thought. We'll take a very quick break. But there's much more on the other side that we're going to continue talking about when it comes to sustainable and renewable energy here in India. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the special panel discussion on the future of renewable and sustainable energy here in India. We also talk very often about the collaboration that small businesses can have with larger businesses. So let's talk about one of the possible areas of collaboration, which is manpower and manpower being trained. How do MSMEs, how do small businesses in this space perhaps work with companies like yourself when it comes to collaboration in different areas? Are there any opportunities that you would want for the MSMEs watching our show to look out for?
I think there are huge amount of opportunities coming in. We say that the electrical field has been actually deprived of startups and deprived of the IoT, IET and the digital interface as such. One of the ways that efficiencies of the solar systems that can be improved, as well as have smaller companies in this space utilize this benefit, is to have tracking systems which are computerized and therefore programs. The second thing that should happen is that we need to have storage systems with smart digital interfaces. That means when the generation drops below a certain level, the alternative source of power, either a battery or a generating station, is picked up. These are innovations that can help the MSMEs in a very big way in the digital space. There are a lot of people who are aspiring now to doing this. And I believe that the startup space will become more populated, moving away from mere consumer related activities to industry related activities, more B2B and more B2C.
Okay. So would you agree with that view? Do you think there's enough innovation happening, Basant, in this space, especially where startups are concerned?
The solar business does require a tremendous amount of scale, otherwise you cannot be competitive. The government has done its own bit. The Surya Mitra scheme, as government runs, is a phenomenal scheme, and they are spending good amount of money to train people in this space.
I want to go back to my previous question on manpower. Is there sufficient manpower available for this industry, which is skilled and trained for the needs of this industry? If not, maybe you could talk about what you as companies, as an industry, is doing for skilling of manpower.
If there is enough manpower available, yes. Skilled available, I can say semi-skilled available, and with little bit of training and some on-job training, we can easily train many persons at the same time, which can be very well used in this solar space.
So I want to move away from talking about MSMEs to talk about some issues which are impacting the entire industry. And the first thing that I want to talk to you about, Mr. Kadia, is the International Solar Alliance. What can you tell our viewers about that? How is that perhaps impacting industry? Any specific impact that MSMEs are likely to see?
I think International Solar Alliance is a good idea. 120 odd countries getting together between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn to set up a huge amount of solar projects. So this will help decarbonize the world. There is a common fund generated for this, and these projects will come up. I believe that the founding meeting is happening in New Delhi on 11th of March, and simultaneously on 10th of March we have our Elecrama starting. So we are happy that International Solar Alliance has tied up with us, and we look forward to have the people there to help the Indian industry export their products out, because now solar is no longer just a national issue, it's become an international issue, and India has to look at how to export their solar capabilities. We've been able to set up massive solar plants at very highly competitive rates, and I'm happy that some of the Indian companies, Mahindra Sustain and others, have been working outside India to set up large solar farms, and that's helping the country. International Solar Alliance is only going to accelerate that process of helping the Indian industry and especially the MSMEs to grow outside of India. One of the things that I would like, referring to your previous question, as a policy from the government, is that any large solar project that is coming in, the government should have a minimum training requirement of locals. If that can happen, where the employability and the money that these people get on a monthly basis or a daily basis goes up, it can lead to a lot of employment, and therefore, if you have a solar plant, say of above a certain scale, it needs to have some minimum amount of manpower training out there. The second thing that I would like to see this industry moving away from merely talking in terms of megawatts to talking in terms of number of units generated. That's important.
Okay, sure. Let me take closing comments from you, gentlemen, and let me come to you first. It's a well-known factor that what a private individual pays versus what a company pays, there's a huge difference in pricing, especially when we're talking about fossil fuel. Now, the difference between the pricing for fossil fuel as well as solar energy, where is it at right now? What would you like to see if this has to be made more sustainable for the industry?
So when we say that price for the end user, and if we say it's an individual homeowner or a small factory, typically they get their power from DISCOMs, which is loaded not only by the cost of generation plus transmission plus commercial losses and many more things, and the customer ends up paying close to 10 rupees a kilowatt hours. Solar is already reached where a solar plant on the roof is economical to generate their own power rather than buying to grid because of the inefficiencies of the system, and second, there is no transmission required, which is a technical loss. So there solar is coming there. The innovation and entrepreneurship in not even on the solar or RE, but total electrical system going in future 10 years, there is a lot will be happen in this electrical industry. So if we can term like we had termed unicorns, there can be many electricons in next 10 to 15 years in India.
All right. Mr. Kare, my question to you is for the MSMEs watching our show. A lot of them tell us that when they're working with the government, they find it very hard to be able to take part in the tendering process because they're competing against larger peers. They find it very hard to be able to enforce that their payments are coming on time because the government has its own payment schedule, etc. As someone who's so closely associated with the industry, one or two things that you'd like to advise our viewers about how perhaps to overcome some of these challenges?
One of the ways to do this is have a kind of large corporate as an accelerator. Basant did imply something like this, that you have a large corporate as an accelerator, and one of the problems also for the MSMEs and the government, which I understand from the government perspective, is that people come in with no experience at all, and then they want to be part of the tendering process, then their project is executed inefficiently. So the government needs to have everybody at a level playing field. The MSMEs will have to have access to finance, and therefore one of the things suggested was interest subvention. There are lots of funds vying for entry into India.
So you think there's a lot of funds which are perhaps looking at the domestic market? Are these foreign, and do you think there's enough interest coming from the foreign players for domestic companies?
Yes, there are lots of large foreign funds vying to get into India, and this interest is coming from a better return on capital than in most other countries. India is today a very attractive market for investment in all segments, especially in the electrical segment and in the infrastructure segment, where people feel that India with its lack of infrastructure, electrical as well as other infrastructure, is going to be one of the best cases for investment and good return. But again, solar field has to be something which is not looked upon merely in the prism of IRR or mere investments. So as I said earlier, the government needs to be a facilitator.
So speaking of the big picture, I want to talk about energy security. What do you think India needs to urgently put in place then if we are to become energy secure?
In my view, a country which imports 90% of its energy, that's not a healthy sign, both from the financial prudence standpoint and also from a geopolitical or strategic standpoint. Solar offers an unique opportunity for a country to achieve this energy security. What is really needed today is to look at this whole renewable in a holistic manner, create a supply chain here which will put up come out with a clear manufacturing policy, create a job here and reduce dependence upon import fully. But it should be done in a very responsible and in a very systematic manner. I personally believe that given the advantage which a country offers, which is one of the brightest place to have the renewable energy, I think there's no reason why we can't really achieve 50 to 70% of our energy through solar. And with the battery prices coming down gradually, maybe 5 years later, solar and storage will be a true answer or true competitor to the oil or coal-based power.
On that very optimistic note, thank you all very much for your time here to talk about really what India needs to do in terms of renewable energy and to move towards being a renewable energy superpower. We're completely out of time on this show, but if you have any questions for us, you can always get in touch with us. leadersoftomorrowtimesgroup.com is our email ID. On Twitter, tweet at me personally at Sunanda_J or LOT_ET now. You can also reach us on our Facebook page, Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now.